and welcome to Teachwire Talks, the podcast that knows education is a serious business. But talking about it doesn't always have to be. My name is Helen Mulley, and I think I may have mentioned before that chatting about education with people who really live and breathe the subject is one of my absolute favourite things to do. So when the call to host another episode of Teachwire Talks comes, you bet I'm going to answer with a resounding yes. Because this podcast is all about lively, well-informed, thoughtful discussion focused on the kinds of edu topics that really matter to teachers, to school leaders, to pupils and to families. Not to mention, of course, making sure that if you, dear listeners, are giving us your very precious time, you come away with something you can genuinely use in your practice. Sounds good? Okay, then let's get on with today's topic. So, today on Teachwire Talks, we are going to be asking a question that I think will resonate with a lot of educators out there. And it's this: if technology is so clever, why are teachers so busy? Because here's the thing, over the years, teachers have seen technology transform classrooms, from BBC Micros to whole class sets of swanky tablets, and from Granny's Garden to Times Table rock stars. But as pressures on the profession have grown, the heart of the issue isn't what technology schools have anymore. It's more about whether the technology is genuinely helping teachers stay in the profession, cope, and thrive. And to help me unpack that dilemma, I am delighted to be joined by two splendidly qualified guests. After nearly 2 decades in teaching, Ashleigh Kennedy recently made the move out of the classroom to become an education account manager at Dell Technologies, where she draws on her extensive experience to support educational organisations with technology that truly makes a difference. Welcome to Teachwire Talks, Ashleigh.
Hi, Helen. Thanks for having me.
We are very pleased to have you. And we are also lucky enough to have a whole vault of strategic tech expertise available to us in the splendid form of Richi Fontaine, a product marketing consultant also with Dell Technologies. Hello, Richi.
Hey, Helen, how are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, thank you. Ready to get stuck in. And I know that both of you are going to have loads of really useful insights to share on this topic. But before we dive right in, I'd like to start, if I may, with a little trip down memory lane. I'm going to ask each of you, Ashleigh and Richi, what piece of school technology, past or present, do you remember most fondly? And if you can't remember anything fondly, which do you remember least fondly? And I am going to pick on you first, Ashleigh.
Well, when I think back to when I first started teaching almost 20 years ago, I remember that the school I taught in, we only had one interactive whiteboard for the whole school. And this huge piece of kit was transported around the school, wheeled around the school on a timetable. So you had it in your class for maybe, the morning section of the day or for 45 minutes out of the day. And it was huge. I mean, it was, we were so lucky to have it at the time. It was transformative in the way that all of a sudden we've gone from using overhead projectors where you wrote on, the acetate sheets, to be able to bring video and the interactiveness that came with this whiteboard into the class. So it was a fantastic piece of kit to have. But moving it from class to class was unreal. It was a job in itself. We had to push it along the corridor. It took about 3 people to move it. And if you were due to get it after, say, interval time, after your 15-minute break, it took you 15 minutes to get it from one class to the next. Quite often you took half a display along with you, or things that were hanging from the ceiling got tangled up in it and stuff like that. So now when you look in classrooms, almost every classroom has an interactive whiteboard. But yeah, so even when I was speaking to my last class that I had, the kids just don't understand that now, that they're so lucky that we have one in every class now, where we used to share it across the school.
Absolutely. And Richi, what about you? What's taking you down memory lane?
Well, I'm a few years longer in the tooth, shall we say. So yeah, having a chalkboard and having a TV on trolleys was a big highlight in terms of technology. Acetate was the high-tech element of it at that point. So I'm going very, very far back when to find the chalkboard eraser, that fantastic sort of fabric covered things that people push along to move the last person's chalk off the board. And then every other year they had to be repainted because they were just so stained with chalk marks from the previous lessons. I'm in that era. So for those that are slightly more, how can we put it, tenured, then you'll relate to that fact that, I'm in my early 50s. So therefore, it's a long time ago. Cart and horses were still going round, etc. But yeah.
I'm absolutely of the telly on a trolley era.
Yeah.
And the joy of that being wheeled around from room to room. Excellent. Yeah. Okay, well then let's get into the heart of this. So we've already touched on it, especially you, actually, with that transition from the precious giant interactive board that was pushed around school to the fact that now it's pretty much expected that there'll be an interactive whiteboard in every classroom. But I'd like us to look a bit more at how technology has changed over those 20 years or so, or even further back. So when you first entered the classroom, what did technology in the classroom mean? What did it look like?
I remember there was one desktop per class. It was the teacher's computer. If children, they looked at it as if they're lucky, they can get on the teacher's computer. It was a fast finisher maybe. If they finished all their work, they could get on the computer. Then maybe it progressed into a school might have an ICT suite. So they might have a room where classes were timetabled and they would get to go maybe once a week to the ICT room. Yeah. I'm talking primary schools here as well. I should maybe mention that, my experience is primary school. So it might have been different in secondary schools, but in the primary sector, certainly, we would have maybe an ICT suite. Then we moved into laptop trolleys, maybe then being brought into the class or, again, timetabled. It certainly wasn't one-to-one. There wasn't class sets at that point in time. I think the biggest shift really came since COVID, since lockdown. Okay. And I know that's 6 years ago now. But when the first lockdown happened, schools certainly, roundabout from my experience, where I live and work, schools were not prepared for that. We did not have the technology for one-to-one devices. We didn't use Microsoft Teams at the time. There wasn't things like that. So when lockdown hit, that first one, and it was the summer term, and it was a bit of we were encouraging children to get out and about, and we were maybe using Twitter at the time to post some challenges, but it was all focused on being outdoors and family time and certainly things like that. When it came to the second lockdown that happened, that January period, there was a big onus on schools to get their remote learning sorted and for policies to come into play. Children were then given devices, especially if they were from disadvantaged backgrounds. There was funding put in place so that it was a lot more equitable for pupils to be able to access home learning. And the pressure on teachers then as well, who were at home navigating their own children at home. I had a 5-month-old and a 3-year-old at home. But you know what? We rose to the occasion, as teachers do. We adapt and we move. And it became not just about the minimum of how can we do this. It was what else can we do? Teachers in my school, we were doing after school clubs on Teams. I had an online choir. We were, the way it just developed then as the pupils became more able to use the technology. And then, so what we were really conscious about when we came back to school after the lockdown was not losing that. If we'd had children who were able to log into Teams, access all these things, we wanted to make sure that we kept that up. That became a priority for my school, so that if anything like that was to happen again, we were able to keep functioning and children wouldn't lose that part of education. If you'd have thought that would happen, even just 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said that would have been possible. And then in the classroom, it became a move to one-to-one devices, children still using Teams within the classroom to collaborate and to share work, and for teachers to post challenges and to post their work for the day. So it just absolutely grew arms and legs, and for the better, I would say, rather than just forgetting about it as a time that happened. It was, okay, we've learned from this and let's move on.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because that is sounding to me like quite a reactive development of technology in the classroom. So, COVID happened and schools as you say, had to adapt, they had to respond. And it's almost like the technology was following after those needs rather than being sought out and implemented. Richi, does that resonate with you, this idea that perhaps schools find themselves adopting technologies without perhaps considering beforehand exactly how they're going to be implemented and what they're going to do, what their purpose is?
I think the biggest challenge when I've talked to colleges and schools, etc., generally, the number one challenge is funding.
Of course.
And I think funding drives what teachers, what colleges, what the end user gets as an experience. And that can really, it shouldn't be the primary, but then you have to think about, there's some schools and colleges I talk to that just don't have the budget. They don't have the IT team to actually support their schools or colleges, or if they do, it's a very small team. And they have a massive workload. So for them, it's around having to, firstly, source the budget. Secondly, convincing the stakeholders that have the budget or the trust, or whatever that could be, to say, these are the justifications for having the funding that we require in order to achieve X, Y, and Z, whatever that strategy might be. And then it comes into, okay, well, we're going to give you X percentage of what you've asked for. And it then becomes down to, okay, how can we spend that smartly and wisely? So it should really be the need, and then you sort of strategize with what you need to have as a school or college. But unfortunately, funding is the primary challenge I always hear from schools and colleges generally.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And of course, if we're talking about how technology has shifted over the years, and what that means for schools, we can't, in this day and age, have that conversation without making a reference to the big emerging technology, which is generative AI.
Absolutely.
So where do you think that fits, Richi, in this education technology conversation?
So I think it's it's almost a transformative era that we're in now. So pre-AI, AI has existed for a long time, but where it is now in terms of, it's widely rolled out. If you look at most laptops, desktops, they have some element of AI within the actual build of that machine. So it's really around, from a Pandora's box perspective, it's already out there. It's really a case of you making sure as an educator, whether that's from an individual pupil, a teacher, a school, college, whatever that could be, making sure you have the right strategy to say, okay, this is what we're going to utilize AI for. We're not just we can't put it out there without guardrails, because there's always good and there's always negative from using AI. So you have to have a real understanding of what you need it for, how you're going to use it, how you're going to develop it, how it will enhance the lives of not only the staff, because the staff, need to make the most of what that capability gives them, but also the pupils and what that means for their learning and how they learn. And taking that into, their everyday lives, because as we go forward, as they grow up and become into the sort of mainstream industries, whatever their profession they work in, AI is going to touch them. Even if it's just on their personal mobile phone, they'll have some element of AI in it. So it's already touching their lives. We all have some element of AI within what we do, whether that's talking to a chatbot at the bank or whatever that could be. And it's that novelty of now, speaking to a human being is now a bit of a luxury these days. So from a teaching perspective and from a pupil perspective, making sure that they can use it in the right and most effective way to maximize their learning and understanding, but also gifting the teachers, time. I always say you have Mother Nature and Father Time. And from a Dell perspective, we try to accommodate both, from the sort of systems and the sustainability that we have within the devices to giving the schools and the academies, etc., the right number of options that they can have, because you have a wide portfolio of solutions. They pick the right ones that's the best fit for what they want to achieve with the pupils, and also gift the teachers that time that they need.
Yeah, I love that. Mother Nature and Father Time. That's great. Ashleigh, if you only recently stepped away from the classroom, at that point, had AI started to enter into your teaching practice, what the children were doing? What role was it playing when you left the classroom?
Yeah, so I would say personally, and from my experience, I would say that AI was definitely being used in the classroom, and teachers were using it, but maybe not always talking about it, because it seemed a bit of a, some people thought it felt a bit like cheating, and maybe, in terms of how teachers were using it at the time. So maybe that was, in generating resources or coming up with, if it was helping to write school reports or these kind of things. I definitely know that colleagues, we were all using it, but we were maybe not broadcasting it, and it shouldn't be like that. AI is never going to take away the job of the teacher and how important that is. But in my opinion, if it can help with some of those pressures and take away some of those lower level tasks that need to be done more often, or also if it can then help you to use data that you're collecting rather than just collecting it for collecting's sake, then I think it would be, such an important tool to have within the classroom in terms of pupils. I've seen some really amazing work from colleagues and from myself in terms of being able to use it for creativity, as being able to hook children in for lesson starters, or being able to get children to use it to go along with their piece of creative writing to generate images and all these kind of things that children can help to sort of develop that creative process as well.
Yeah, it's about turning it round, isn't it? Not having it as this secret, slightly almost shameful thing that's lurking in the background. But if you bring it to the forefront, and if you, as the teacher, model great use of it and encourage great use of it with the pupils, then it becomes just another piece of technology in their toolkit that they can use. Yeah. And then you kind of demystify it a bit that way, I guess.
Yeah. Years ago, we would teach distinguishing between fact and opinion, maybe in terms of looking at different newspapers or where children were getting their sources of information. And then, we do a lot of teaching around real news and fake news, and it's just bringing that into the AI conversation too. My own daughter's 9, and if we're looking at things on the internet, she'll say to me straight away, "That's AI, Mum." And how do you know that? And she can just look out for these little things. So it's teaching children how to use AI responsibly, to understand that it's not the be all and end all. It's not just, you have to fact check things. You have to put your own justification onto things. But it's a really useful tool for maybe starting to generate ideas or starting conversations or, these kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to wheel us back to the main question now, because I think AI is particularly relevant to that as well. And so what we're thinking about here is, if technology saves time, why are teachers still so busy? Because you look at pretty much every school, technology is everywhere. Planning, assessment, communication, safeguarding, attendance, report, everything. And yet, workload remains one of the biggest concerns in the profession. I know it's a big question, but Ashleigh, from your experience as a teacher, why do you think that is?
Teachers wear so many hats throughout the day, and you touched on that yourself there, where safeguarders, we wear and sometimes a parental role for parts of the day. And so when things come in that are supposed to save time, quite often that time gets filled with other things. And whether that's other duties or other jobs or other, we're so good at, great, we've collected all this data now. Now we need to do other things with it. So sometimes when there's a lot of data to be collected, it just then encourages you to start thinking about, what does that mean and how can we use that? I think what my hope would be going forward is that AI tools will be able to maybe bring systems together so that there's less duplication. Systems can speak to each other so that you're only maybe inputting into one system and it joins up other areas, or, in terms of assessment or reporting or planning or anything like that. That would be my hope of how AI can really make the biggest impact in school.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Richi, if you were advising a school who had come to you with this situation, we know that technology could ease the workload for staff. That's what we want it to do, but we don't know how to plan it and implement it to have that outcome. What kind of advice would you be giving that school?
I think it's primarily going to be very important that they're clear as to what they want to do, what's their endpoint, what does good look like for them in terms of their ultimate nirvana of how it could look for them. And then you look at what technologies are available to help you on that journey. And obviously we're there from a Dell perspective to say, okay, we have these tools, we have these products, and we have this wraparound feature that's going to give you that ability to have a smooth and understand that journey. So we're very much there to be the sort of, I guess, trusted advisor, for want of a better word, to understand what that journey is for that academy or school, because they could be very different. You get some that have multiple schools that might be at different levels of teaching. You could have colleges versus a primary school, very different budgets, very different outlooks on what that could be. And then it's come down to things like, okay, if we're using AI, do you need to use things like Copilot Plus, for example, which has some great tools in it for teachers. And we did a show at BET, and we had a event or a side meeting where I presented to something like 50 or thereabouts teachers, educators, etc., in collaborating with the Education Academy. And we looked at things around Copilot Plus and what that could do if someone had a Copilot Plus capable PC, which has to be this technical thing of 40 plus tops, which stands for very boring, but for trillions of processes per second. If you have a 40 plus tops or higher, you can run Copilot Plus. And Copilot Plus has things such as the live caption facility on that. You've got recall on it. But live captions enables you to actually plan lessons, do the tests, vary it in terms of the abilities of different students, if you've got different learning abilities within the classroom, and do a lot of things that would give teachers back a lot of time. But not only that, if you're looking at things where you've got academies that, say, for example, want to build their own chat models, for example, or do some inferencing or some sort of AI-capable application they want to build themselves, we have tools that can do that and help them with that. We've got something called the GB10, which is ultimately you're able to do things that would previously go into the cloud. You can do things on site to build that. So I'd say the upshot is it's really around what do they want to achieve? What's the goal 5 years down the line? Critically, what is the budget? Because you can have, you can shoot for the stars, but if your budget only gets you as far as Lidl or Tesco or whatever it could be, then you're not really going to get there. So you have to be realistic about what budget you have, what you can actually achieve with that budget. And it could be something like you think, okay, we can't buy these products outright. Can we go down a leasing model, etc., which is not something necessarily the teachers need to be aware of, but it means that from a teaching perspective, they might get better equipment because they look at it from a different perspective where they think, okay, if we buy the right tools, the better laptop, rather than buying 50 of one type, let's buy slightly fewer but a higher spec that gives the teachers the ability to have those tools that they can then enable the teachers and also enable the pupils if you're getting the right device for them as well, because they'll have a different use case, for want of a better word. So whether that's a sort of like Dell Pro education, where they're used for, pupils like to drop things, unfortunately. So they're built for things being dropped, or they can be managed easily because it's a collective. So the solution you need to have is not only to satisfy one element of that education authority, school, or whatever that could be, because you've got to satisfy the pupil, the teacher, the IT team that are going to look after that estate of whatever you have, and also keep the trustees happy that the budget is being spent in a wise way.
Yeah, of course. And it's not just about going out and buying the best product that you can afford, is it? As you've said,
No.
it's about strategy and implementation as well. Yeah. I'd be really interested to know if either of you, Ashleigh or Richi, in your wide experience, have come across a situation where technology has been introduced into a school with the best intention to solve a problem or to improve things for teachers and students, but has actually almost had the opposite impact because of a lack of proper implementation or training or teacher buying or whatever. Have you come across that, either of you?
I think from an AI perspective, I would say a lot of institutions I meet, they're still a bit wary because they're not totally sure, if they let it go without putting the proper guardrails, as I said before, in place, they're worried where it's going to go and how it's going to get used or abused, as the case may be. And there's still a lot of wariness around how we use it. They like the idea of it, but how we use it, can we afford it? That's another big factor. And how long it would take to implement, and do we have the resources? Because we want to give the teachers the best possible experience as well as the pupils, because if they're both satisfied, then hopefully the outcome is you've got happy children, happy teaching methods. Teachers aren't spending half of their evenings doing prep for the following day, which is no fun for anybody. And hopefully making sure that, AI works for them the best way it can, because ultimately it's there to improve our lives generally.
Absolutely. And that brings me on to what I wanted to talk about next, in fact, because what we can't forget in any conversation about education, that it is ultimately about the people in education, isn't it? That the children who are entitled to the best learning experience they can have, and the professionals we trust to deliver that experience. So let's talk for a while about the people. And Ashleigh, I'm going to bring this to you and talk about something which might be a little bit sensitive, but if you are able to share, I think it will really resonate with a lot of the people who are listening, because we've been breezy about the decision to walk away from the classroom, but that's not a decision that any teacher takes lightly. It's a tough one because teaching is a vocation. It's what your heart tells you you have to do. So I would really appreciate it if you could talk us through a little bit what led up to that decision and what it meant for you.
Yeah, so unfortunately, it is a topic, I would say, that is in most staff rooms at the moment in schools. It's, can we do this any longer? What can we do? What do we do if we're not teaching? And that certainly, from my experience, was the topic in my staff room for, in the back of my mind for a good probably 18 months before I finally decided to take the chance and do it. And I think a lot of that, there's a lot of reasons. Workload is obviously the huge one. Teachers are, we give so much of ourselves for the full term of, whatever it is, 10 weeks, 13 weeks per term. I mean, so much to the point that you have nothing left to give until when it gets to the next holiday, and then you take some time off and you recharge, and then you go again for the next term. And coming up to this time of year, speaking to my old colleagues who are just in those last final weeks of term before the summer holidays, it's, I remember it so well, and it's not even been a full academic year since I left. So still very much, in my mind. I think I had longer maternity leaves, really. But when it comes to it, the questions are, well, certainly for me, it was, what do I do? And I think I was stuck in the mindset that it had to be in education. I needed to look for a job at another school, or, it had to be promotion. I had to go into leadership or something like that. And it was only really when I took the time to think about, what are my skills? What's the skills that I think are my strongest, that I bring to this job and that I like doing, the parts of the job that bring me the most joy? When I took the time to really think about that, it then opened up another world of, actually, and with the help of AI, it told me, if these are the skills that you like and that you have and you feel are your strengths, you could also maybe go into sales or marketing or whatever it is, because teachers' skills are so transferable in terms of communication, managing their time, problem solving. We think on our feet all day, every day, decision making, resilience. So to be able to then take that step and look outside of the classroom, I had issues in terms of thinking about finances. Am I going to have to take a cut in wages? And unfortunately, that's a big thing for a lot of teachers, because teachers that are maybe at my stage, where at the top of the pay scale, would then have to feel like they were starting all over again. So you have to go into an entry-level position. And that's what I did. But very quickly, I've started to move on and move up and moving into different roles, because employers can see that actually there's something else about you. You've got more to give, that kind of thing. It was really emotional as well. There was that element of guilt that I think holds a lot of teachers back. Certainly, as you said, teaching is a vocation. My family were devastated at first when I broke the news and told my mum and dad I'm going to leave teaching. They were like, oh my goodness, what? The teacher of the family is now moving into the corporate world. However, fast forward maybe 2-3 months, they could then see the difference in myself personally when I don't have those pressures. Comments from my mum saying I just seem lighter. And that's quite sad to think. You don't realise that you're being worn down so much, because teachers love their job. I didn't leave teaching because I didn't like teaching anymore. I left it because of pressures from the job, demand and impacts that was having on my family life with my 2 young children at home. it's not great when you go home and you maybe don't have the most patience for them. And I think that's probably a lot of teachers, mums and dads of my age who then, when you're teaching in your early 20s and you maybe don't have those pressures, it's fine. But as soon as, I think the biggest number of teachers that leave the profession are between that 30 to 40 age range, where, it's just so many more demands in and out of school. So I didn't leave teaching because I stopped caring about teaching, but I recognised there was parts of the job and parts of me that I could help and contribute towards education in a different way.
Yes, exactly. So in the conversations that you're having with schools now around technology, are you seeing technology actually very much as a retention piece, as a way of making schools somewhere that teachers are not going to walk away from?
I think it could help. It certainly could help if teachers have the right tools to use.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I have got another question for you both. That is a little bit of a curveball, and it is this. If you could solve one everyday frustration for every teacher in the country tomorrow using technology, what would that frustration be, and how would you deal with it? You can invent a piece of technology out of thin air, or you can use something that already exists. And I'm going to pick on you first, Richi.
If I could do one thing for them, I would probably say give their schools an academy and a budget that actually works for the pupils they have.
Oh, that is huge, isn't it? That is absolutely huge.
Yeah.
What about you, Ashleigh?
Oh my goodness, if I had a magic wand, the things that would change. However,
you do.
I think I'll keep it real. And I think I will say that the teachers need technology that is reliable so that they can walk into every lesson. They know that the lessons they've spent the night planning, because let's face it, the planning doesn't happen all the time when the children are in front of them. So if they've spent time after school planning a lesson, that then when they come in the next day, everyone should be able to access that without, someone's laptop failing or the Wi-Fi dropping out, or, as soon as something like that happens, it can disrupt the whole lesson. And it's so hard, especially these days, to keep the engagement of children. So as soon as there's any downtime, it just becomes a huge issue. So I would just make sure that it works first time, every time.
Yeah, that is so, so important. And it's interesting as well, Richi, because I was thinking earlier on as we were talking about this idea of searching for innovation, searching for something new and brilliant that's going to solve everything. And I wonder if in the excitement of chasing that shiny thing, schools can sometimes ignore the importance of reliability and just having a framework that actually works.
Yeah, I think getting the right set of tools in any profession, whether it be you could be a mechanic, you could be whatever that could be, but having the right tools for the job, as I always call it, is critical. And having a happy teacher is always a good thing. Having pupils that aren't distracted. I mean, we were all pupils at some point, so we know what we were like when we were younger. And that distraction can come if there's a delay, or if the teacher doesn't turn up and there's a supply teacher in that doesn't know anything. And there's always some people that would chance their arm at things. Having things that are going to, enable people to just get on with what they need to do, whether that's the teacher teaching, whether that's the pupils learning, or whether that's the IT department being able to actually manage that particular estate of product or products they have, so they don't have any downtimes, they don't have any drops in Wi-Fi, all the equipment that's going out, whether that's to individuals, students' homes, or in the classroom, wherever it could be, are going to just work. And that's sort, from Dell Technologies' perspective, that's what we aim and strive to do with the sort of like the product range that we have and the services and the support that we try to give our any customer, agnostic, whether it's education, etc., is to make sure we're giving them the right solutions, because ultimately it's a tool, right? It's a tool to make sure that they get the teaching, the educators get to educate, the IT team get to run a successful, slick operation from a information IT AI perspective, and the trustees get a good bang for their buck, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what everybody wants.
Yeah.
Amazingly, we are nearly out of time. But before we wrap up, I would like us to try just a little bit of reflection, plenary of sorts, if that's the language I may use. So I would like each of you to imagine a teacher listening to this episode. Maybe they're driving home, maybe they're out walking the dog, or maybe they're in the staff room trying to finish a coffee before the next lesson. Can you think of that teacher and then try and come up with what you think is the single most useful thing you'd like them to take away from the conversation that we've had today? What's the top technology takeaway from today's conversation? Ashleigh, I'm going to pick on you first.
Yeah, I think I would just go back to that point of using technology in ways to save you time, in ways to be able to enhance learning and enhance, the impact that can have on pupils, the way it can break down barriers for so many pupils, barriers to learning, and just enhance that overall experience. But making sure that you're using it because it's worthwhile, not just because it's the new thing that's come out, or you've just been given a new set of laptops, or whatever it might be for your class. Really thinking about what the children are getting out of using that technology, or also if you're thinking about yourself, how can you use that technology to make your life easier, or to just make the job a bit easier, because it's ever demanding, pressures are just adding on. So yeah, I would say that maybe just about moving away from being just impressed about technology for its own sake, and about whether it's actually going to improve life for teachers and pupils. And another thing I've thought of there, when I came into the corporate world and started using my laptop with an additional monitor, that is game changing. To be able to have your laptop, I was just thinking, if I'd had this in school, if I'd been able to have maybe my lesson plan on one screen and my PowerPoint that I was making down here on my laptop, or vice versa, the productivity level would have been, so much better. So if your school is ever getting rid of any monitors, or, upgrading anything, don't let them, say, can I have that for my classroom? Because that's been a huge change for me.
That is such a teacher response to that question. Creative, thrifty, practical, game-changing. That is what teachers do, absolutely at the heart of it. And also, why is that knowledge being gatekept by the corporate world? Why don't schools know this?
I know.
Richi, what's your takeaway?
So my takeaway would be to make sure that if you're ever asked for your opinions on what is possible, what they can give you from a teaching perspective to help the tools that you have, is to make sure that you're thinking about, whatever you're going to be given, whether it's a laptop, a desktop, or a monitor, a peripheral, whatever that could be, typically you're going to have that for a number of years. So making sure that they're investing in the right technology that's going to see them through the next 3, 5 or more years. I remember there was one academy I was speaking to, and they had some laptops, desktops. I couldn't believe they're sort of 8 years old, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So not only would they not run Windows 11, but they probably still have an elastic band going around. I don't know what's going on in that thing, but so just make sure that if you do have an opportunity to put your sort of two penneth in, think about your home life, think about how AI has impacted your home life. And think about the pupils, because the pupils quite a lot of the time will have as much knowledge about AI from their phones, etc., than the teachers do. Probably they know more, to be honest. So just making sure that you have the right tools for the job. If you do get the option, there are solutions out there. Dell Technologies, of course, we have a whole raft of solutions generally, but it's about you getting that time back so you have a proper life outside of teaching. Teaching shouldn't be about you take it home and you're still prepping till 10 o'clock and then you're back in the class in the following morning and rinse and repeat for a number of years. I have a lot of friends that are teachers, and they have good times and bad times, let's be honest. And the pupils don't help sometimes, but it's that thing about just giving as much of yourself, if you get the opportunity, to put in your two pennethers to the direction of your academy, school, college, etc. Funding's always going to be a challenge. We all know this from talking to any number of schools, colleges, etc. that I'm aware of. There are options out there, but it's tough. Let's not kill the lady. It's tough out there. So you might not get everything that you want, but if you're going to get something, make sure it's something that's going to future-proof you, keep you secure, keep the kids secure, and just make sure that it gives you the best possible experience you can have.
Definitely. There you go. You have a voice. Make sure it gets heard in this conversation. That's a really positive note to finish on, but it does bring us, I'm afraid, to the end of today's episode. Thank you, Ashleigh Kennedy and Richi Fontaine from Dell Technologies, for joining Teachwire Talks today. It's been a really fascinating conversation. And I think it's a timely reminder that when it comes to technology for education, success isn't really about devices or platforms or specifications. It's about helping schools create environments where the teachers can thrive, pupils can succeed, and precious time can be spent on the things that matter most. So if you're looking for smart ways to help you manage those workloads, respond to diverse student needs, close the learning gaps, and confidently adopt new digital and AI-enabled approaches in the classroom, why not register to join Ed360? That's Dell's hub for smarter teaching, where educators can explore practical ideas, tackle common challenges, and see how modern technology and AI can support teaching and learning. It's such a comprehensive platform. It's got webinars, podcasts, classroom-ready resources, and expert-led content designed to help schools embrace future-ready IT and bring AI-driven learning into the classroom. And of course, you will find the link you need to register in the episode notes, along with further resources and information. Thank you, as always, to everyone listening for spending your time with us. I'm really grateful. I've been Helen Mulley. This has been Teachwire Talks, and until next time, keep asking the big questions, because that is what great EdTech and Teachwire Talks are all about.